You're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said the U.S. offers strong 15-year security guarantees, but Kyiv wants longer. As discussions continue amid the war, President Donald Trump says a deal to end the conflict is closer than ever, but there is still no breakthrough on territory as diplomacy continues. The Kremlin says Ukraine must withdraw its troops from remaining Donbas areas if it wants peace and warns Kyiv could lose more territory otherwise. Moscow says Putin and Donald Trump have spoken ahead of Trump's talks with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, with another call planned soon. The United Nations says traumatized civilians in Sudan's El Fasher are living in undignified and unsafe conditions, with little water, sanitation, or shelter. Aid officials warn many people are in abandoned buildings or under plastic sheeting as the city struggles with famine and the aftermath of fighting. Taiwan warns more than 100,000 air passengers face delays as China's live fire drills disrupt hundreds of international flights. Authorities say the impact will affect departures, arrivals, and transit services as travel plans are thrown into chaos. Former world heavyweight boxing champion Anthony Joshua is injured in a highway accident in Nigeria that killed 2 people. Local media and police sources say the crash happened on the Lagos-Ibadan expressway when the vehicle he was traveling collided with a truck. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet President Donald Trump in the United States as regional tensions rise amid Israel's operations in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. The talks at Mar-a-Lago on Monday focus on advancing the first phase of the Gaza truce as pressure builds around Iran and regional security. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says the U.S. offers strong 15-year security guarantees, but Kyiv wants longer. As discussions continue amid the war, President Donald Trump says the deal to end the conflict is closer than ever, but there is still no breakthrough on territory as diplomacy continues. Thailand's army accuses Cambodia of breaking a ceasefire by sending more than 250 drones over the border. Officials say the incident raises tensions as both sides have agreed to hold hostilities. Now for this hour, we start with Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin has told top military commanders that Russia must press ahead with offensive operations to secure full control of the Donbas region and the city of Zaporizhzhia. In a meeting in Moscow, military leaders report advances along the entire front line, saying Ukrainian forces remain largely on the defensive. Russia's general staff says troops captured thousands of square kilometers and hundreds of settlements this year. The briefing comes as Putin prepares for expected phone talks with U.S. President Donald Trump amid ongoing diplomatic efforts on Ukraine. Let's listen into what the Russian president and chief of the general staff has shared.
Помешать развитию ситуации в самом Купянске тоже, конечно, нужно решительно пресекать. Я знаю, что вами предпринимаются соответствующие необходимые действия для этого. Мы все прекрасно понимаем, что освобождение Северска и эффективная работа в Константиновке позволяет войскам создать условия для развития дальнейшего наступления и овладения всей Славяно-Дружковска, Краматорска, всей этой агломерации и овладения всем рубежом обороны противника, а также во взаимодействии с войсками Запад и Центр полностью освободить территорию Донбасса.
В декабре уже освобождено более 700 квадратных километров территории и 32 населенных пункта, что является самым высоким показателем продвижения за месяц за весь уходящий год. Всего в этом году под наш контроль перешло 6640 квадратных километров территории и 334 населенных пункта. Противник каких-либо активных наступательных действий не предпринимает. Основные усилия сосредоточил на укреплении своей обороны и пытается замедлить темпы нашего наступления проведением контратак на отдельных участках и массированным применением дронов.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has told top military officials, commanders that Russia must press ahead with offensive operations to secure full control of the Donbas region and the city of Zaporizhia. In a meeting in Moscow, military leaders report advances along the entire front line, saying Ukrainian forces remain largely on the defensive. Russia's general staff says troops captured thousands of square kilometers and hundreds of settlements this year. The briefing comes as Putin prepares for expected phone talks with U.S. President Donald Trump amid ongoing diplomatic efforts on Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has told top military commanders that Russia must press ahead with offensive operations to secure full control of the Donbas region and the city of Zaporizhia. In a meeting in Moscow, military leaders report advances along the entire front line, saying Ukrainian forces remain largely on the defensive. Russia's general staff says troops captured thousands of square kilometers and hundreds of settlements this year. The briefing comes as Putin prepares for expected phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump amid ongoing diplomatic efforts on Ukraine.
Попытки противника помешать развитию ситуации в самом Купянске тоже, конечно, нужно решительно пресекать. Я знаю, что вами предпринимаются соответствующие необходимые действия для этого. Мы все прекрасно понимаем, что освобождение Северска и эффективная работа в Константиновке позволяет войскам создать условия для развития дальнейшего наступления и овладения всей Славяно-Дружковска, Краматорска, всей этой агломерации и овладения всем рубежом обороны противника, а также во взаимодействии с войсками Запад и Центр полностью освободить территорию Донбасса.
В декабре уже освобождено более 700 квадратных километров территории и 32 населенных пункта, что является самым высоким показателем продвижения за месяц за весь уходящий год. Всего в этом году под наш контроль перешло 6640 квадратных километров территории и 334 населенных пункта. Противник каких-либо активных наступательных действий не предпринимает. Основные усилия сосредоточил на укреплении своей обороны и пытается замедлить темпы нашего наступления проведением контратак на отдельных участках и массированным применением дронов.
Now we move on to Middle East. According to Israeli media reports, the Israeli military is set to launch a broad series of investigations into its ground operations during the war against Hamas in Gaza. The reviews will be formally initiated in the coming days at a senior command conference led by IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir. The probes will examine the ongoing war triggered by Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack with a major focus on the Gaza ground campaign. The debriefings will cover multiple operational phases, including the push into northern Gaza and Gaza City, the capture of Khan Yunis, operations in Rafah, and along the Philadelphia corridor and repeated battles in Jabalia. Senior commanders will also review why no plan was prepared for a full takeover of Gaza, whether opening the ground maneuver in the north was the right call, and how the presence of hostages affected combat decisions. Intelligence failures linked to Hamas's tunnel network will also be scrutinized. Parallel investigations are planned into operations against Hezbollah, actions in the West Bank and southern Syria, and the IDF's recent operations against Iran. Findings are expected to be shared publicly by late 2026 if fighting does not resume. According to Israeli media reports, the Israeli military is set to launch a broad series of investigations into its ground operations during the war against Hamas in Gaza. The reviews will be formally initiated in the coming days at a senior command conference led by IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Zamir. The probes will examine the ongoing war triggered by Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack, with a major focus on the Gaza ground campaign. The debriefings will cover multiple operational phases. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now, looking at Israel and the IDF's plans, how might the planned IDF investigations impact Israel's military and decision-making in future conflicts?
Of course, if the leadership has changed in Israel, it will affect the military operation. So that's why the leadership should be stable. But at the same time, this political scandal has a long-term issue. So that's why when the war has happened, of course, people are waiting. But now the time is come for the ceasefire. So that's why there's a possibility it will be the big impact to the leadership in Israel. But at the same time, Israel faces many enemies at the same time. So that's why there's a possibility that another conflict could happen soon. Or in case of the Hamas refused to disarm and opposed to the deployment of the international forces. So indeed, this scandal itself is rely on the security situation around Israel. If the military operation has happened again, in this case, of course, political scandal is people will wait a little more, and that is not just so big impact.
Right. And what do you think? What political pressures could be influencing the scope and transparency of these IDF's operational reviews?
Of course, it relies on the leadership because there are many military secrets in the military operation, and in case of the politics, the corruption issue is also illegal. So that's why both cases, how to keep the transparency is a matter of concern. But at the same time, the simple explanation is during the battle, it is impossible to seek the transparency, but in the peacetime, it is possible. So that's why the peace or battle time, this is a very important difference.
Right. And how could this outcome of these probes affect Israel's domestic legitimacy in the ongoing Gaza conflict?
Of course, if the leadership has changed, the attitude towards the Gaza operation will change, I think. Because in case of the government, Netanyahu is represented with many right-wing parties. So that's why they are hawkish, and if about October 7th terrorist attack, of course, a very strong reaction is seeking from these hawkish parties, because but at the same time, if the political party is more moderate one, of course, attitude could be the change. So, view from the military operation, it is logical that if the attack has happened, punishment should be the heavy. But at the same time, it relies on the decision of the political leadership, because some people do not like the military-oriented idea, more political-oriented idea they like. So in this case, the decision itself will be affected by the political leadership.
Thank you for highlighting that and sharing that insight, Dr. Satoru Nagao. Please stay with us as we come back to you for a later discussion as well. Now we welcome Mr. Matti Zweig for our discussion from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Zweig, for joining us once again. Now, looking at IDF's report, how might the planned IDF investigations impact Israel's military doctrine and decision-making in future conflicts?
Well, in Israel, you have to do a big distinction between the administrative culture of the government and the administrative culture of the army. The things in the army have been traditionally much more ordered and much more, let's say, fair, because all the estimates of the army work in a very positive way, even despite all the big failure of the 7th of October. Before and after, the army decided to check themselves. And they checked themselves in the way they were always checking themselves in all the previous wars and all the previous acts, and even not only for things that happened, like in the Air Force, they don't always check something that happened, they always check also something that almost happened. So it's very deep.
We seem to have lost Mr. Zweig, but thank you very much for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we stay in the region. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has voiced concern ahead of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's meeting with President Donald Trump in the United States, warning Israel risks losing control over Gaza's future without a clear strategy. Addressing the Knesset subcommittee on foreign relations, Lapid has said that Netanyahu is traveling to Washington without an organized plan for Gaza, leaving room for others to shape outcomes instead. He has cautioned that this could push Israel towards what he described as a client state status. Lapid has warned that Turkey and Qatar, which he called ideological partners of Hamas, could emerge as dominant players inside of Gaza if Israel fails to act. He has reiterated his proposal that Egypt should administer Gaza as a more stable alternative. Lapid said that in the absence of Israeli initiatives, ideas from the United States, Qatar, Turkey, or even Hamas could fill the vacuum. He has described Israel as politically paralyzed at a critical moment as talks focus on Gaza and threats from Hezbollah and Iran continue. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for staying with us. Looking at this once again, how could Israel's lack of a clear Gaza strategy affect its talks with the United States?
In case of Israel's Gaza policy, indeed this could be the reactive because it has started October 7th terrorist attack against Israel in 2023. So Israel's policy is originally came from the reaction from this attack. That's why this is not intended strategy. But at the same time, now in the 2025, end of 2025, this means 2 years later, they should set up a more clear strategy. That is true, and they start to talk, I think. But generally, the 2 years discussion is enough or not. Generally, this is not enough, we believe. So that's why until now, this is a little bit reactive attitude of the Israel. So clear strategy should be written by someone else who can share enough time to think about it. And in this case, United States as a third party, but who support Israel very deeply, is intervening and suggest their idea how to write new image of the Gaza, and in this case, their suggestion is indeed telling to the Israel it has happened, I think. So, some cases, some people worry about statue of the President Trump or something, but at the same time, anyway, a strategic idea how to deal with Gaza is indeed they need a certain time to think about it, and that certain time is not enough because it has started from the terrorist attack and the reaction has happened. So in this case, it is not easy to find the time, I think.
Right. And lastly, how might the domestic political divisions inside of Israel shape the foreign policy and security approach towards Gaza?
Indeed, militarily, occupying the area where is written of the terrorists is very dangerous, because if the troop enter, it could be the easy target to kill from the terrorists. So that's why occupying Gaza itself is very difficult work as a counterinsurgency. So that's why if Israel identifies a clear image, for example, some party insists Israel should occupy the Gaza, and including the humanitarian assistance or even domestic politics of the Gaza, Israel should intervene. So this is occupation type policy in the Gaza. But some people really insisted, but this is very difficult choice, I think. So that's why if they will not occupy, what kind of choice they have is another matter. Currently, the U.S. suggests, which is some steps President Trump, right? This is only the strategy people can write. So, example, in case of Israel, in case of the other Arab countries, indeed, which one is the most practical, feasible strategy or feasible situation is indeed itself is controversial. So now the U.S. suggestion is the only suggestion that people can talk. Of course, there are many weak points in this plan, but at the same time, this is the only plan someone suggests as a feasible plan. So that's why the U.S. suggestion is valuable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for a later discussion as well. Now we stay in the region. Hamas has officially confirmed the death of its spokesperson, Abu Ubaidah, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike on August 30th of this year. The announcement was made in a video statement released today, where Hamas paid tribute to Ubaidah as a revered leader of their military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades. The group also confirmed the death of other senior commanders, including Mohammed Sinwar, Mohammed Shabana, and Hakim al-Issa. However, in a significant development, the identity of Abu Ubaidah was revealed to be Hudayfa Samir Abdullah al-Kahlut, who was previously known only as by his alias. Meanwhile, a new spokesperson, also named Abu Ubaidah, has taken over, vowing to continue the struggle against Israel. The statement comes amid ongoing hostilities, with Hamas leaders stressing their commitment to the conflict despite heavy casualties. Now we move on to Europe. The European Union has called for the swift formation of a new government in Kosovo following weekend elections after caretaker Prime Minister Albin Kurti's party emerged clearly ahead. Brussels stressed the need to overcome months of political deadlock that stalled Parliament and blocked key EU-linked reforms. The EU has urged that the new government quickly restore institutional functioning, pass pending legislation, and move forward with critical funding agreements. Kurti has pledged to reform the government immediately and work with any necessary coalition partners, aiming to stabilize governance and unlock international support. Analysts say his strong mandate gives him the authority to act decisively, while the EU continues to watch developments closely. The bloc has emphasized that swift government formation is key to maintaining political stability, advancing reforms, and safeguarding regional peace. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Doctor, for staying with us throughout. Now looking at this, what impact could this prolonged political deadlock have? And why is EU really, sharing a warning and rushing Kosovo to move forward?
Kosovo need to talk with Serbia and to join the EU or implement other policies, because a certain number of the Serbian people still stay in the Kosovo. And so that's why Kosovo needs a stable government. But indeed, in February, the election has happened. That was the first election, not this time, but first election has happened. But that time, the governmental party, ruling party, had failed to get majority in the parliament, even if they are relatively big. So that's why this is not a stable government. This was not a stable government. But this time, in the elections, they increased the number, and so that's why now is the time for President Kurti Prime Minister Kurti forms more stable government. So that's why if they form the stable government, they can talk with Serbia more practical, more, and if they agree the practical agreement, in this case it is relatively easy to join EU or other thing. They simply said the policy they can seek will be achieved through the stable government. So that's why this election is very important. And so now the increasing number of the ruling party is good news for EU and Kosovo, both indeed.
So how might Albin Kurti's strong electoral mandate influence coalition negotiations and also government formation in Kosovo?
It still matters because coalition means that he need to talk with consider with the coalition partner. So that's why after he forms the coalition government, of course it will be stable. But compare with compare with the situation just after the election in the February, situation is improved. It is clear, and so that's why this is good news anyway.
And lastly, Dr. Nagao, how can the European Union effectively encourage political stability and also reform in Kosovo?
Because Kosovo want to join the EU, and so that's why in this case Serbia.
And building on that, while encouraging the reform implementation and Kosovo wanting to join EU, how should EU not overstep the sovereignty of Kosovo while encouraging reform implementation and all the changes, including political stability?
From the map, it is relatively easy to understand because if Serbia is clearly opposed against the EU, it looks like something, the problem happens just middle of the EU countries, EU members. So that is not a good situation for security because Serbia will be tilting toward Russia more, and Russia's maybe base is located in Serbia could happen if Serbia clearly isolated from the EU. So that's why from the EU, they want to include Kosovo, but at the same time persuade Serbia to be the more friendly country for the EU. So that's for one by one they are creating the good move, and so Kosovo's participation in the EU and was a good established a good relation with Serbia. That is also the policy for the EU. So that's why the peaceful resolution is the best way for EU. So that's why the stable government, negotiation and deal, this was a proper process, and so EU wished it.
With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for joining us today all the way from Tokyo and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we have a breaking news. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has claimed that Ukraine tried to attack President Vladimir Putin's residence in the Novgorod region, and so the Kremlin's negotiating position would now change. He has said that Ukraine attacked the Russian president's state residence with 91 long-range drones on 28 to 29 December without offering any evidence. The Russian foreign minister has said that despite the alleged attack, Moscow intends to continue in the negotiating process to bring an end to the war. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has dismissed the accusation that Ukraine tried to attack Putin's residence as a lie, adding that Moscow was preparing the ground to strike government buildings in Kyiv. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has claimed that Ukraine tried to attack Vladimir Putin's residence in the Novgorod region, and so the Kremlin's negotiating position would now change. He has said that Ukraine attacked the Russian president's state residence with 91 long-range drones on 28 to 29 December without offering evidence. Now we move on to our next news. NVIDIA has completed a major strategic investment in Intel, purchasing shares worth $5 billion according to a regulatory filing. The transaction follows an agreement announced earlier in September, under which NVIDIA has agreed to buy Intel common stock at $23.28 per share. In total, NVIDIA has acquired more than 214 million Intel shares through a private placement. The deal is widely viewed as a financial lifeline for Intel, which has faced years of operational missteps and heavy spending on capital-intensive manufacturing expansions that strained its finances. U.S. antitrust authorities have cleared the investment with approval, confirmed through a notice from the Federal Trade Commission. Following the disclosure, NVIDIA shares have slipped in pre-market trading, while Intel stock remained largely unchanged. The move underscores NVIDIA's growing influence across the global semiconductor industry. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.